Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Care OACES. This is the podcast, the great podcast by Dr. Cooper, who is going to say hello to all of you right now.
Hello, this is Dr. William Cooper, aka Dr. Coop, MD, and welcome to the Care OACES, sponsored by oaceshealth.com. We're glad you're here. This is a safe place in the desert.
Dr. Cooper, your story is so intriguing, so beautiful, so emotional. But let's start at the very beginning. Where were you born and raised? Did you always want to be a doctor? Was either of your parents a doctor?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in a small town in southern Missouri. That town is called Hayti, spelled Hayti, not A-T. Has nothing to do with the country Hayti. In fact, there's another city in North Carolina, exactly the same spelling, Hayti, Hayti, North Carolina. It's in the Boot Hill part of the state. That's the little boot-shaped point that sticks down into Arkansas if you look at a map of the state of Missouri. So I was born and raised there. Born in a traditional family, mother, father, 4 boys, 4 girls. It's interesting, the pattern. It is girl, boy, girl, boys meaning twins, girl, boy, girl. So I was in the second girl, boy, girl set at the bottom. I was number 7 out of 8. Always wanted to be a doctor as far as I could remember. Yes. It was solidified when I was 14 years old. However, but prior to that, I was always interested and did very well in school in the sciences, biology, and things like that, organic chemistry, chemistry, those things, physiology. I always did very well in those classes and just had an interest in how biological systems work. And in my immediate family, no, both my parents were educators. There were no doctors in the family.
Well, you just said that there was a particular moment in which you decided that it was healthcare and being a doctor. What was it and why?
Yeah, so I was 14 years old when my mom passed. She was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and that's pretty impactful for a 14-year-old boy. We're still in love with mom at that point in our lives. Not that that love ever goes away, but it changes over time. And so for me, it was very, very impactful. I was, I think, very angry, but more than, it wasn't anger. It was just it was weird. It was very intriguing to me, the concept of death at that point in time. Well, grandparents had died and people, but you just didn't think that a 46-year-old woman is going to get such a devastating disease and die that young. It's not supposed to happen to mom or dad or a sister or brother or anyone. And so I was just very, very curious and confused and didn't really understand why this was happening. And that was the thing that really secured my interest, my passion, and my desire to become a physician. That was it. That was the story. My mama dying of pancreatic cancer at a very young age, and me being fairly young at the time, 14 years old.
Was there anything about her death that made you think this could have been avoided, or was it just the death?
Yeah, no, not at that time. Not at age 14, no. It was nothing there in terms of what went on that I could understand, that I could say that at that time. However, as I got older and began to understand medicine and began to understand, how body systems work, I was like, wow, there were a lot of warning signs. I remember clearly months, probably years in my head before my mom died, she would always complain of back pain. I mean, it was just, this really kind of nagging sort of thing. And when I look back on it, I think about it at the time, I was like, well, she just got a little back pain. That happens to people. Okay. But now when or as I was getting into medicine and understanding symptom complexes and how these things all work together, I was like, wow, that pain that she was having was very likely related to the pancreatic cancer. Back pain is one of the signs of advanced pancreatic cancer because it begins to invade the nerves in the part of the body we call the retroperitoneum. And so I was like, man, that she had all the signs. And then one day, I'll never forget this. I can remember like his clock. I mean, just like it happened yesterday. I was one day, I went in the bathroom behind her, and there was literally a pool of blood. So at 14 years old, I'm thinking to myself, well, this is a mom female kind of problem. You know, maybe she just forgot to flush. And, so I didn't think much of it at that time. But again, later on, I began to think about it. I said, mom had bleeding. And I thought, well, that's not menstrual bleeding. That's gastrointestinal, rectal bleeding, associated also potentially with an invasive pancreatic cancer. Later on, I remember having vomiting episodes and those kinds of things. And then finally, the pain got so severe that she went to local doctor. And, they at that time in 1982, we were kind of just on the verge of developing CAT scans. And so she did have a CAT scan, and I'm not sure exactly what it showed, but I'm sure based on the surgery that she had, it showed that there was extensive carcinomatosis throughout her entire abdomen. She underwent a surgical procedure to try to reroute her bowels because of the vomiting she was having, just to relieve her symptom of that. But that was unsuccessful. And so 6 months after she was diagnosed, she passed. And again, I'm giving you a lot of information that I later understood as a physician, a young medical student in training and those kinds of things. It's the picture is very, very clear. Was there something that could have been done? No. At that time, pancreatic cancer was uniformly fatal. There were not many survivors. You had to get really, really lucky and be diagnosed very, very early for you to survive pancreatic cancer. Now, the good news is these days, the survival rates for pancreatic cancer have gone up with aggressive surgery, chemotherapy, early diagnosis, and the ubiquity, if you will, of the tests that can pick this up, and even some biological and genetic type markers that, if you're susceptible to it or have a family history of it, that you can look into with your doctors. But at that time, there was really nothing that I could see that could have been done differently.
So you're a 14-year-old who's just lost his mom. I assume none of them, not your dad or your mother, were doctors. And you tell your dad that you want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
What did your family think? Was it something that was easy to do back then, where you were living? You had, 7 siblings, which means 7 people going to college. How was it when you said, I want to be a doctor?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, coming from a family of educators and high achievement, that was expected, honestly, I think. And then the good news is that my dad came from a really big family, and he already had 2 brothers that were doctors. I had a cousin who was just ahead of me in high school, who had gone on to medical school or was going on to medical school as well. And so the influences and the, if you will, the conditions or the expectations that you're going to go to school for sure. And it wasn't unusual to become or want to become a doctor in my family. And I think that's the beauty of coming from a larger family. Most families are a microcosm of society. And ours was no different in that regard. Was it difficult? I didn't think so, honestly, because we'd always been raised that we could do anything we want or we set our minds to. Okay. Financially and sort of thinking back on, the financial strains and the cost of it, honestly, I didn't even think about it that way. I just thought, I was going to be a doctor. I was determined. And I think the message there is you get something in your head that it's good. It's good for you. It's potentially good for society. It's good for the people around you. then there's absolutely nothing that can stop that. And so I didn't approach it as, oh, just because I'm from a little small town in Missouri, I can't do it. I approached it from a can do, will do um, perspective. And whatever barriers that were going to be put in front of me, um, I was going to overcome them. That, unfortunately, coming from a small town, can be a draw for some families, some people, because of the family environment. I got over that hurdle. I didn't have to deal with that when I was blessed to be born into a great family. But then when you think about externally, the community and the people around you, they don't have those experiences or didn't have the access to those kinds of experiences, and therefore they can't see it. And so, if you can't see it, how can you become it? But I could see it because of my family. And so I was never influenced by the environment and the community that I grew up in, except for growing up in a very humble, hardworking community. And so I had people around me encouraging me all the time.
Your journey is really inspiring, and I do believe that you were 14 and you made a decision and you were going to make it happen. But were there any doubts along the path? Did you at any point say, I don't know, this might be too much?
Yeah, I did. There was a very specific time when I said, "Oh, I don't know about this," and that's when I took my first chemistry examination in college, and I got a C minus. Now you got to remember something. I came from a small town where I was the man. I was valedictorian of my class. I was the athlete. So I'm kind of like the good looking, athletic, smart kid from a little small town in Missouri. Doesn't hardly mean a lot when you get to medical school. So that's like, I was like, ooh, that was my aha moment. Like, man, this thing is pretty real. It's pretty serious. And so I was, that was a moment for me that was kind of like, man, this is going to be difficult, or potentially could be very, very difficult. And you know what? It's like fate. And again, it's not just you, but it's the universe that has a plan for you. I had a professor in that chemistry class that he called me down after that first exam. And he said to me, do you know that on the pre-entry chemistry examination that all the kids were given, you scored the lowest of all of you all? I said, whoa. I said, no, I didn't know that. I said, nobody pulled me aside to tell me that. And I said, I appreciate you saying that. And he said to me, but that's a challenge for you, but it's also a challenge for me. He said, I know you can do this work. And he said, there's no surprise that you made a C minus on this test. Quite frankly, I'm surprised you made a C minus based on the pre-entry chemistry exam. I was like, wow, really? And he said, but I'm going to help you. He said, here are my office hours. It was written on the board for everybody. He said, but I really want you to take advantage of those office hours and come by and see me after each one of these sort of modules that we go through. And he said, it'll be pretty obvious to you, because back in those days, I guess they still do it. They would give you a syllabus. They would kind of tell you what was going to be in every. So that was just each one of these little sections are modules part of the syllabus. He said, so after each one, or at any time that you want, I want you to come by. So I'm going to make sure you understand this, and we're going to get you through this. I was very, very blessed and appreciative of that. I ended up getting a B plus in that class, and didn't get many B's after that. Certainly didn't get any C's while I was in medical school. I do have to explain something, though, for the audience so you understand. I went to a 6-year medical school, so at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. So what that means is that we came right out of high school. It's very much similar to a European type model. In fact, that's where the model came from. The founder of the school, Edmund's Gray Diamond, this was the first school of its kind in the United States. Strictly 6 years. You came right out of high school. It was based on your performance in high school, extracurricular activities, and the usual things and attributes that they look for that to try to determine your ability to succeed and get through it. And so I went to a school that everybody came there right out of high school, 100 of us. And of that 100, I scored the lowest on the pre-entry chemistry exam. I remember going to St. Louis, Missouri to take the exam. And, it was kind of interesting. You walk into that room and that was very intimidating. I was very intimidated. I mean, in high school, I went to a school that was probably 80, 90% African-American, Black. Went and walked into that class and I was like, man, I was one of maybe 2 or 3 Blacks out of all these kids and they're taking this. I was like, oh my Lordy Lord, what have I got myself into? But again, determined, not afraid, ambitious. I'm going to make this happen. I had a mom die of cancer and I don't care what hurdle you put in front of me, I'm going to get through it. And so it wasn't the woe is me. I didn't play victim or any of those things. I just kept striving. I just kept going. And, in fact, today I'm still that way. I'm in school right now. I'm doing a Harvard AI and healthcare online executive education course. I just love learning, particularly things that I'm curious about. And that's been a very strong attribute for me. But, doubt, yeah, that chemistry exam, created a lot of doubt. I was like, oh my God, is every class going to be like that? No, it wasn't. All the other classes, except for chemistry, I really love organic chemistry was my favorite. That's a little bit different than just physical chemistry. So, organic chemistry is more focused on the chemistry of biological systems. Physical chemistry is more focused on, non-carbon, magnesium, and all these other things interacting, hydroxide, all these things existentially from the body and how they interact with each other. So, yeah, but that created a little bit of doubt. But, beyond that, no, it was just drive, determination, can do, gonna do, attitude.
Doctor, can I call you Dr. Coop?
Sure, yeah, sure.
Dr. Coop, are you still in touch with that professor?
I am not. I can see his face like it was yesterday, literally. And actually, I asked one of my best friends from college and medical school what his name. He couldn't remember him. I'm going to ask him again, as a matter of fact, because I just could not remember his name. I remembered, and that was so. I mean, I think there was a combination of being in shock from that exam, and a whole world sort of crashing down around me. I was like, oh, you know what? I can't. I mean, so I couldn't even kind of think about it. I could see his face though, and I'm sure somebody. And in fact, 2 years ago we had our 30th class reunion, graduation from medical school. And we talked about that and somebody told me his name, but after you get about 5 decades on you, sometimes things just are a little bit elusive.
Dr. Coop,
Yes.
you've worn so many hats.
Yes.
A heart surgeon, entrepreneur, now podcast host. What has been the common thread connecting everything you do?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The common thread for me, and I just realized this probably within the last 5 years. Okay. Now let me try to put it together for you. So, the family history, mom died when I was young. I lost a sister she was the youngest girl, died at 27. The next oldest sister died a few years later. She was 41. She died ironically after heart surgery. I had one of the twin boys died May of 2007 of a heart attack. He was 45. I had a sister, the oldest sister, die in 2014 of metastatic ovarian cancer. And then my oldest brother, the third of the 8 kids, he died in 2012 of AIDS, HIV AIDS. Now, I look back on that and here's why I say I really only, pardon me?
So that means only 3 of the siblings are alive?
Yeah. 3 of the siblings and my father's still alive. He'll be 92 in February. If he makes it to February 15th, he's going to be 92 years old. Doing well. He's got some memory issues. He's had strokes and articulation issues, but 92 strong years, you know. So yeah, there's only three of us. I have a sister, and one brother and myself that are still alive. Everybody else died young. The one brother that's alive is the only one of the siblings that has made it to 60. And if my sister's birthday, which is tomorrow, she's just older than I am. She will be 50. This may be 60 for her. Yeah, this is 64. Yeah, she's got the big 60 coming up tomorrow. So I got to send her the big 60 shout out. So yeah, they will be the two that have made it to beyond 60. The oldest sister who died the last one to pass away died in 2014, and she was 58 years old. So putting it together in terms of what's been the common theme, there's a very fundamental common theme. And that fundamental common theme has been a humble, passionate, caring nature for the plight of people. Okay. And you can say, well, I got that from my father. I got that. No, I didn't get that from them. They just happened to be that way as well. I didn't pick them. They didn't pick me. And so I think, however, what happens is spiritually, we end up being in the presence of those people that, if you really examine it, are like you in some way. And that includes family members. Or, quite frankly, and this happens in life, if you really examine it, and you hope that it's the majority of the people around you are people like you in some way, in a spiritual way. But also sometimes I think God doesn't get anything wrong, but sometimes I think in your presence are the antithesis of you. And so you got to always be very careful when you say to someone, I don't like you, or I don't like this, I don't like that, because it may be, if you really examine it, that you're talking about yourself. It's karma. Okay. Karma will tell you that. If you read a lot about karma and certainly in the Buddhist and Hindu faiths, they talk a lot about these things that most of us just go through life and we don't even think about it. So I say that to say that I think I was put in an environment and I was shown through the indoctrination that we all go through from the day we are born, but I was shown that it's better to be a caring, nurturing, understanding person and respecting who you are, respecting the nature of your being in your life, than it is to be contrary to that, whatever that contrary may be. And so as I look back and I think about the deaths, and I talk about those deaths in my family, each one of those taught me something about me, but it also taught me a lot more about the profession that I chose. So think about this now. Motivated by my mom dying of cancer, okay? And combining that with my, to some extent, precociousness, and going to medical school, learning all the book stuff, all right? Excelling at that, except for that chemistry exam. But then being shown it in a very personal, emotional way when you have family members all throughout this process. You know, my mom died in 1982. My older sister died in 2014. So over the course of, how many years is that? What are we 10, 92, 12? Okay.
32.
32 years. Over the course of 32 years. Every, so often I had a sibling die. And each one of their stories speaks loudly to some aspect of our partially broken healthcare system. And so when I think about it and I look back and I think about my purpose in life, is to serve people. It's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. There's no, I'm going to go build a spacecraft to go to the moon or whatever. I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to do everything I can to help people. And so what that has been concentrated down to in my professional life and through my entrepreneurship, and the sort of common thread that you asked me about throughout all of that. So you got a guy here who's now looking back at this, taking it all in, trying to do the deep dive inside to figure out where this all fits and makes sense for me. And so within my profession, what I do, it's about access to care. That's the common thread for all of them. Mom didn't have access to a CT or, advanced therapies for pancreatic cancer. Youngest sister died of undiagnosed diabetes. Okay. Didn't have access to caregivers who could recognize that a young sexually active 27-year-old female can have something else going on besides a urinary tract infection. In fact, what she was having was polyuria, which she's peeing all the time, and also polydipsia, drinking water all the time. Well, guess what? That can be two things that are pretty common in medicine: anemia, especially in a young menstruating girl, menstruation, or it could be, guess what else? Diabetes that's unchecked, hyperglycemia. Okay. So she died of diabetic ketoacidosis. Okay. Brother, smoker, had, at 40 years old, roughly, had bypass surgery on one of the arteries in his leg, 45. And you say to yourself, why, would somebody 45 years old need that kind of surgery? Well, it's because it's built up plaque in his arteries in his leg. But guess what? If it's built up plaque there, it's built up in his heart. No one ever checked his heart. Okay. Brother, the oldest brother, okay, who died in 2012 of AIDS. I mean, I will tell you here as I sit here today, I have not seen personally a case of AIDS, and I've worked in a very, very busy environment in healthcare all my life. I haven't seen anybody with AIDS in over 20 years. I've seen lots of people with HIV, but they walk around looking like you and I. They just take their medicines. Well, he wouldn't do that because guess what? He came from a small town we both grew up in where he remembers dad and grandfather and them talking about the Tuskegee Project. Okay? He remembers that, where black men with syphilis were denied life-saving curative penicillin. That happened. And I didn't know this until after he died, and some of his friends came to the funeral, and he said, I'm surprised you guys didn't know that he had AIDS. We tried for years to talk him into taking the medicines, and he wouldn't do it. Matt Johnson was diagnosed with HIV in 1991. At that time, statistically, he was going to die within the next 5 years. And he has no, as far as I know, he has absolutely non-detectable disease. The virus is probably so dormant, it doesn't even matter. It's floating around somewhere stuck in one of his neurons, like chickenpox or some of these other herpes or something, viral things that get stuck in our bodies that never manifest themselves. So the oldest sister, Janice, she went to get a pap smear on her birthday in 2014, March. This is a really tragic story. March 2014, March 18th. I called her on her birthday. Well, no, she'd gone 3 days earlier, and I called her on her birthday, which was a Friday, if I'm not mistaken, just to wish her happy birthday. Oh, I went to get my pap smear. They just called me, and they see some abnormal cells on my pap smear. I said, okay. All right, well, let's get on it. Let's figure out what we're going to do about this, okay? And I'm in Atlanta. I was on faculty at Emory University, Emory Winship Cancer Center, one of the top ones in the country, probably in the world. I know all these people, and we can get you in and get you diagnosed and get you on the proper treatment plan. Well, that was March. And I said, well, get me the records. I said, I don't really need the records. I said, I just need you to come here, find some time. You can stay at my house in Atlanta, and we'll figure out a time. I'll get you an appointment before you even come. You can stay here. And we'll get the ball rolling. Well, she didn't have insurance at that time. I said, oh, don't worry about that. We'll figure it out. I said, they're not going to deny you care. And I said, I know people. Let me help. Okay. She was a very meek kind of person. And so she never got me those records. And when she did, she sent me something probably in early May. And, it was just the administrative record of when you register in a hospital or a clinic. It just had all of that, your name, date, address. I was like, Janet, this is not helpful. I said, I need to know what we're dealing with. But I said, more importantly, I need to get you here so we can work on a treatment plan, getting you in to see the right people. That's May now. So finally she gets in to see a local doctor. She ends up having surgery in July of 2014. Surgery, chemotherapy, and all that was the plan. Well, the surgeon goes in, he removes the ovaries and uterus, but she already had disease in her liver. It had already spread to her liver. She didn't know that at the time, and she probably never knew it. But I found out about it when I started asking questions later on. So now, so that's all the surgery she got. And so usually what would happen in these scenarios is you would get at Emory Winship in Atlanta or MD Anderson or any of the other large cancer centers around the country. What would happen is they bring you in, they do a multidisciplinary conference. All of the specialists talk about you, the surgeon, the oncologist, the radiation people, all of those, the nurses that are going to be navigating your care. Everybody talks about your case. They come up with a treatment plan. If surgery is involved with it, then usually if you're going to have that surgery, oftentimes they'll go ahead and put in your chemotherapy access port at the same time, because we know the chemotherapy is going to happen probably 2-3 months after it. If it's not, they're going to go ahead and put that chemo port in you probably within a day or two. And so there were significant delays, and the fragmented, backwards in a lot of ways, healthcare system didn't help. So she got the surgery, but they didn't put the chemo port in. She didn't get the chemo port till late September. The first time that it was scheduled, she went to have it done, and it was scheduled with a doctor who doesn't do the procedure. So she goes back again, finally gets this thing put in late September, gets around the chemotherapy in October. By Thanksgiving, just prior to Thanksgiving of 2014, she's in the hospital with pelvic sepsis. So what that means is that the suture line where the surgeon took her uterus out was basically falling out through her pelvis. Horrible way to die. The smell was unbelievable. And it was just tragic. So she ended up dying on December the 26th, 2014, the day after Christmas. And so when I think about all these stories and I think about the common thread, it's a lack of access to information, access to resources, access to experts, professionals, services, whatever you can imagine. And that is why OACES exists. And we spell OACES, OACES. And that is an omnipresent, meaning everywhere, access to care, experts, and services. OACES is going to become the largest platform for accessing healthcare doctors, providers, nurses, and services in the world. That is my goal. That is the mission that we are on. Because in 2024, that is the type of technology and resources that we have, not only in this country, but globally, to get people to the right people at the right time when they need it the most, on their terms. So at OACES, we're building a platform. We're building a platform of information first. We're building a platform whereby patients can go and just ask for help. How do you, ask a question? How do you navigate this? What's, take a course. I mean, just go through and learn about something. And this isn't WebMD, and that's no fault of them, but we're not going to be some commercialized sales platform for the latest drug or Bayer aspirin or whatever. We're going to be about people, okay? We're going to be about getting them to the right resources, again, at the right time, and getting them the right services that they need and helping them navigate this system, pointing them in the right direction. How are we going to do that? Well, building a platform is one thing. You've got to have something there that people want to consume, whether it's information or a service or those kinds of things. But the unique part of our service is going to be the fact that every person who comes on there, who subscribes to our OACES, is going to be assigned a nurse. Yeah, personal kind of nurse. If you want to, you'll be able to connect with them online. and just talk to them about what it is you need and where you're trying to go. We're not planning to be your treating provider, although we do have access to our telemedicine platform, which is called Primo Health Partners, to be able to do that. But you get a diagnosis of cancer. This happens every single day. It's probably happening as we speak right now. Somebody's in some doctor's office somewhere getting a bad report. And right now they're not consuming the information. They're just in shock. Doctor's sitting there talking and perhaps clicking on the computer or whatever. They're going to walk out of that office. They're going to go home, sit down. And all of a sudden now the fog is going to clear. And now they're going to have questions. Well, you can call that doctor's office back and they'll give you we'll call you back in 24 hours. It'll be very fragmented. It'll be very, very pointed. You'll get just the information that you asked for. Okay. But what it won't be is what you really need is a reprise. Okay. You need to play this back now that the fog is cleared and understand OACES is going to provide you that place. Let's play it back. Eventually, as we develop out our platform, we'll be able to connect you directly with experts on our system. We'll be able to download your records from wherever they may be. Cloud-based record storage is one of the facilitators of what we're going to be doing. There's lots of, in fact, most people don't know this, but when you sign those papers to be seen in any healthcare facility, the small print says that your records are going to be housed in the cloud. Okay. Well, that's a good thing because the reality is that's going to facilitate interoperability, people from anywhere, providers, that is, healthcare specific relevant healthcare personnel be able to go and get those records. We'll be able to create a script for you of everything that's gone on with you and have you be able to read it, understand it, watch it evolve, check out the trends, and then hand that over to an expert who can, in that reprise or that encore visit, you'll be able to kind of, sit down, calm, clear head, think it through, and get the answers that you need. That's OACES. So if you think about an oasis in terms of OASIS, an oasis is this beautiful oasis, this beautiful place of calm and serenity in the middle of what? A hot burning desert, which is pretty chaotic outside of that oasis. And so we changed the name of our oasis just to create curiosity and also differentiate what we're doing, but also create some meaning behind it. So we spell our oasis OACES. And again, omnipresent access to care, experts, and services as it relates to healthcare experts, health services. So that's where we're going with our platform. We're going to be very unique and different because we're adding the personal touch, being able to
Dr.
sit
Cooper,
down.
this is so important and
Yes.
so needed, not only for the patient, but for the families as well, that
yes.
do not understand what is going on with the patient.
That's correct. That is correct. Yes, that is definitely correct. And we want to keep it personalized, but we also want to maximize the efficiency provided by the use of technology. AI. We'll be employing some AI technology at some point in the future on our platform. We won't do it right off the bat, but that's going to be a big part of what we do. And we're not talking about the AI chatbot, but we're talking about the AI to help get your information together and rationalized in a way that makes it very, very easy to review for a provider and easy for you to interpret and understand.
What have your personal experiences taught you about resilience and the importance of advocating for yourself or a loved one in the healthcare system?
Yeah. That's a very, very important. So now we've talked about the personal kind of family thing, but then we can talk about the personal aspect of that in terms of my experiences in life. Okay. The first C- in chemistry class. But I'm also reservist, Army reservist, 35 years, retired in 2019, did 5 tours abroad. And you just imagine, okay, let's play that one back. So in 2003, I got my first deployment. On Christmas Day, 2003, I had boots on the ground in Al-Assad, Iraq. in the middle of a war zone. That's Christmas Day, 2003. The things that I saw there, you cannot unsee. Okay. And people say that sometimes, but it's really interesting because there are things that I know I saw that I can't tell you specifically that I saw it. Isn't that kind of weird? I didn't know this until I came back. And I started suffering from all these nightmares and I would wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, breathing heavy and sweating like, what? My wife's like, what is wrong with you? I said, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't know till years later I was very likely suffering from PTSD. I was just operating and going about my business. And then, when I went through, counseling and therapy and all these things, I remember the psych. I was telling her these. I said, I don't understand this. I said, we have this impression of people who suffer from psychological trauma that they're out on the street, dilapidated, especially the vets. They're drug addicts, drunks, spitting sermons that are incomprehensible on the corner somewhere. No, she said, no. In fact, that's not the majority. She said the majority look just like you. They're high performing, but they know that they're not performing in a very, very helpful mental way. And she said, in your case, it's pretty easy to understand. She said, you're a surgeon, right? I said, yeah. She said, okay, so you get up early in the morning, you go to work, you take care of all these people. And so what does that require? That requires vigilance. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, sure. I was like, because, people say, oh, what kind of day are you having? A, B, C. Well, surgeons have to have A days. Because if we have B, C, or D, or E days, some people may not work. I always say to that end that the biggest lie that's ever been told in healthcare is that the patient comes first. That's a lie. Don't believe that. If healthcare workers and providers don't come first, they cannot be prepared to take care of you. You got to take care of yourself first. So that's one thing about resilience and understanding. And in my experience going through these things, I didn't understand it. But my vigilance for what I was doing when I was caring, it was matching up to the activity. So my vigilance, hypervigilance in some ways, was matching up with what I needed to do in terms of focus and taking care of patients. The problem is that vigilance isn't needed at midnight. And so your brain is turned on when it should turned on to that vigilance when it should be turned off. For other people, it results in panic attacks and all kinds of other weird things. Okay. But that's the disconnect in somebody who has that kind of imbalance. But resilience. And I will tell you, and here's another good thing, and I'll just get your question back to the idea of OACES. An empowered patient is much more likely, one who comes into your office with a list of questions and they've done their research on their condition, is much more likely to do better, regardless of what the condition is, than one who is stressed out, has no information, and is solely relying upon a system, a very chaotic, fragmented system to care for them. And I'll tell you, I love it when patients come into my office and they've done their research, they've gone and done Google, whatever. Great. Because that tells me you're engaged. Versus what I get often, which is, oh, well, tell me what's going on with you. Tell me your story. Oh, it's in the chart. You should know. Oh, no, I don't. Guess what? I read hundreds of charts a week. And I try not to keep many of them beyond the very important things top of mind. So no, I know what the chart says, but I want to hear from you. I want to know your story. So the resilience, so you think about that. You think about going through, this whole traumatic thing. And then you think about the people that I'm taking care of every day. But again, underlying and underneath all of that was just this appreciation for humanity, appreciation for the gift that I've been given, appreciation for the difference that I can make. I'm humbled by that. I just had somebody ask me the other day, said, oh, do you have this, I guess if you will, God complex? I said, sure I do. I have this God complex and I thank God every day for giving me the complex. Give me this complicated life. Yeah, thank you. But no, it's really important resilience requires some degree of humility, um, a tremendous dose of humility and understanding who you are, and then having commitment to the purpose and and satisfaction, if you will, with whatever your station in life, especially if it's one that you've created. I created all of this. And it's just, and it's a joy to be here. As a friend, a buddy of mine asked me the other day, why are you in class taking a class at 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night? Because I want to, I like it. I said, what else would I be doing? Sitting here watching Netflix or a boring football game with these teams that don't matter in the playoffs? I said, what else would I be doing? I'd be doing this or reading a book, perhaps, or vegging out on a documentary or something. So the humility, which has led to sort of just a respect for humanity, and I think those are the foundations of resilience. And that's why you can go through a lot of different things and have those things not crush you or not knock you off your pathway.
Dr. Cooper, if you could deliver one message, only one, to every patient and healthcare provider turning right now, what would it be?
For the patients, I would say this: trust yourself first. Trust yourself first. Don't give up hope. Never stop fighting, but you got to trust your instincts. Trust yourself. For providers, and I've seen many of them, I know many of them, treat yourself first. I am in hospitals almost every single day. And I come in contact almost every single day. And this is reality. This is not hyperbole, with a miserable person working in that environment. You can just tell. I mean, you know, the energy, and oftentimes these are doctors, and some of them I worked with for years, and they're still the same, angry, stressed out. You can't deliver care that way. You can't deliver the best care. I don't care what your outcomes are. You just can't do it. And at the end of the day, if there's imbalance in one place, there's imbalance in another place. So for providers, I would say you got to take care of yourself first and humble yourself. You hear a lot about physician burnout. There are a lot of things that are happening, I think, that are influencing that. But I think what happens to us largely is what we allow to happen to us. If you don't allow that, it won't happen to you. Even if you're not in a great work environment, how you show up and the energy that you bring largely determines what you're going to get out of any situation. And so complex message, but for patients, trust yourself. We get a lot of calls, even into our telemedicine site. I get a lot of calls. I'm very gregarious. I've got probably 7,000-8,000 numbers in my phone. So people just randomly say, hey, do you know a doctor who can do this? Yeah, sure. I know somebody. And so they trusted me. And so to some extent, we want to be able to build that trust with them, but they have to trust themselves first. Don't give up. Keep looking for whatever it is you're looking for. It's out there in terms of the type of healthcare providers and services that you're looking for. It's out there. We want to provide you with a place of trust that you can find that, perhaps in some cases even be treated to the extent that those things could be treated in a virtual environment, telemedicine, for example.
You've shared such powerful stories today. I know I'm gonna be thinking about them for a while, and I'm pretty sure our listeners will. So what can listeners expect in the future episodes of the Care OACES?
Oh yeah. So today is just an intro. This is our first segue. give you a little bit of insight into what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be breaking it down. We'll be talking about how to access the system, how to find the right doctor for you, how to navigate. We'll talk specifically about some conditions, perhaps, but it's really going to focus largely on accessing. We're gonna beat that. You're gonna get sick of talking about it on the Care OACES. And we want to hear from our listeners. We want to hear back and from them in terms of some of the things they would like for us to talk about. I know this time of year it's open enrollment for a lot of people. Everybody's trying to figure out how do you find the right insurance provider, or how do you pick the right plan that they offer you. And so we'll touch on those kinds of things. We'll talk about bias in healthcare. We'll talk about the influence of AI in healthcare. I'm actually taking a course on that right now, and how that could potentially affect your ability to access in a good way. I think it's really a good thing, honestly. So lots of things on our plate. We've got quite a full slate. We'll be coming back at our audience frequently to give them more great nuggets. And hopefully they'll go and log on to the website, www.oaceshealth.com, OACES health.com. Sign up. Sign up for our alerts, newsletters, blog posts, information. We'll be putting it out there. Stay in touch with us, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Before saying goodbye, I would love for you to invite everyone to stay tuned and listen to the next episode of the Care OACES.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned. Come back again. Be looking for the next episode of the Care OACES, exclusively hosted by TopHealth Care. And so TopHealth Care is going to be the media outlet for experts like myself and others who are interested in taking care of people and giving you the right information about all types of conditions. So come back, tune in for the next episode of the OACES Healthcare Podcast.